Good morning, everybody. I'm Irene Pasternak, teaching Feldenkrais with Northwest Parkinson's. And Tuesday, we worked on bladder-related issues. And afterwards, it's funny how things go in waves, but all my clients in the last couple of days have wanted to work on bladder-related issues. And so I have some new ideas since Tuesday, and I want to play with those in the class today. And they're also wonderful things to play with for posture and for reducing anxiety. So it's going to be a fun class today, working in that, the interconnection between all those things in our bodies. So come and sit toward the front of your chair. With your knees nice and wide, your feet flat on the ground. Okay. And take one hand and put it where your back pocket would be if you had a back pocket in your pants. Slide it under and find that sit bone. And find in the shape of the bone, where is it flat and where is it round? You can move a little behind it, a little in front of it to feel the different shape of that against your fingers. And move a little left and right. And then make a little circle around your sit bone with your weight. You take your whole body around that sit bone. Good. And take your hand out. And feel if you're sitting differently on the left side and the right. If one sit bone feels flatter, more solidly. And let's play with the movement that we did in the Tuesday's class of tightening the front sphincter. And feel if you can tuck to one side of it more than the other after finding your sit bone. There's just something that feels a little different about how it engages. Okay? And then let's put our hand under the other sit bone. And go a little forward, finding the flat part that goes up toward your pubic bone. And then a little backwards, that's the rounded part of the sit bone. And a little left and a little right. Notice, is it hard to get over to the side of the sit bone? And then just do a little circle in one direction around your sit bone. And then a little circle around the other direction of the sit bone. And take your hand out. Feel what this sit bone feels like. Close your eyes for a moment. And just sense your connection with your chair. If you're feeling perhaps a little more supported, a little more distributed in the weight. And check in with your mood. Just this finding the sit bones can reset the mood into a little bit calmer spot. And it's lovely because your sit bones are with you all the time. You don't need a drug, you don't need medicine, just find your sit bones and then the brain relaxes a bit. And then squeeze that front sphincter and see if now the second side might be a little clearer to you. Today we're going to play with the second half of developing muscle control, which is the relaxation side of the muscle control. So we're going to play with breathing a little bit. So sit in this place where you're a little bit further forward on your chair. So you're on the front surface, you're right at the front of the chair, but you're also tilted a little forward. so you're on that flat part of your sit bones. And take a breath in, trying to press right down into the center of your pelvic bowl. Okay. So try that for a few breaths. You breathe in, and there's a way you push with your diaphragm that pushes down, and it feels like it's putting a little pressure down on your abdominal organs, down into the bowl of the pelvic floor. All right. I'm thinking about the pelvis as a bowl, and then thinking about some nice, pretty decorative bowl you might have in your house. You could polish it with your, if you had a hand like in your pretty decorative bowl, you could go like this from side to side. So I want you to imagine the bowl of your pelvis, your belly in the front, your bottom in the back, and that with your breath, you're polishing the inside of that bowl from front to back and back to front. You might find you have to move a little bit on your sit bones in order to use your breath to push down with that forward back motion. And notice if you do it right exactly in the left, right, middle, or do you do it a little bit over to the left or a little bit over to the right? Most of us are a little asymmetric. And if you find you're doing it more on the left side of the bowl, exaggerate that. Shift your weight to your left side and really do the left side of the bowl. If you're feeling like you do it a little to the right, shift your weight to the right, and really you're just polishing one half of the inside of the bowl. There's a way you have to engage your other leg to hold you over on that side to do that bowl. So then to go to the other half of the bowl, push with your foot into the floor on the other side so that your weight transfers onto the other sit bone. And just polish the inside of the bowl a little bit. So one way people do this is they hold their breath a little bit. You take a breath in and hold it, and then find a way to move it from front to back, back to front. And then find the place where you're not on your left sit bone and you're not on your right sit bone, but you're somewhere in between. Your weight is distributed as best you can, and polish front to back a few times. You can rest your hands very lightly on your belly with the edges of your pinky resting along your pubic bone and your fingers resting on the roundness of your belly, but very lightly, not trying to prevent it from moving. Just to feel that as you polish the inside of this bowl, that your belly moves up when you polish the front, and it moves down to get to the back a little bit. Rest for a moment. Put your hands back on your low belly and cough a few times. Make a sharp little cough, and feel how that part of your belly pooches out when you cough. That relaxation in that part of the belly is an important part for proper bladder function. And many of us have grown up with Pilates or exercise or things that tell us to keep our core tight. So if you do what you think of when you think of a tight core, pull everything in Kind of lift yourself up and out of yourself and feel how your belly pulls in there. And then relax it again so you can find that bottom of the bowl with your breath. Okay. So now we've polished forward and backward in the bowl. Let's polish left to right in the bowl. So you do something with your breath to send your breath down into the pelvic floor, going left and right. And for most of us, it's easier to go one way than the other. Which way for you is it easier to, or you might feel like your bowl has higher walls on one side than it does on the other? It's an asymmetric art bowl. Isn't it nice to know we're a piece of art? An asymmetric piece of art, okay? And if you find one side that it's easier to go up that side of the bowl, put your weight on that sit bone and polish going up the side of the bowl that's easy. Try the other side a little bit while your weight's over here, but you'll feel you're even more asymmetric. And then shift your weight to the other side and polish the other side. And feel, what do you do in your ribs that lets you go higher up the bowl with your breath? There's usually a little bit of side bending up in the upper ribs that helps you go higher as you polish the bowl. All right, rest for a moment. And stand up. And standing, just see how you feel on your feet after this little bit of play. And notice, do you have more weight on your right foot or your left foot at this moment? And begin doing this polishing movement with your breath, left to right, right to left in your pelvis as you're standing. And see how it shifts your weight from foot to foot. If you put your hands lightly on your belly, you can feel as you polish the bowl, your belly will move to one foot, over one foot, and then your belly moves a little over the other. And especially focusing on the low belly. Okay. Let that go. Sense how you're standing on your feet, how your weight is distributed left and right. And then begin to polish the bowl from the back to the front to the back. Feeling in standing, how is it to try to find the middle between the left and the right to polish? Feel how it shifts your weight a little bit forward and back in your feet. So you take a breath in and then use your breath to polish inside you. Good. And then walk around a little bit. And keep track of this pelvic bowl of yours as you walk. How does it move as you walk? And then come and sit down. So now I'd like you to imagine that there is a bowl right up at the top. Our lungs come right under. Find your collarbones in the front and your shoulder blade in the back. Our lungs come way up into the top of these top ribs. And you could imagine that there's like a dome over it, and there is a membrane inside us that goes over the lungs. So now begin with this upper bowl to polish. So if it's shaped like that, you're polishing left to right with your breath. You can breathe into one shoulder. You can breathe to make you taller. You can breathe to the other shoulder. Let's try just that much. So before we start the polish, breathe into your right shoulder so that your breath makes your right shoulder lift up a little. And then breathe to lift your whichever shoulder. I don't remember now if I said right or left, your other shoulder. Breathe to lift your other shoulder. And notice how you have to shift your weight a little bit in order to direct the breath. And you have to move your belly over a little to shift the breath. Okay. And then try and send the breath straight up to make you taller. And then try to connect those into a smooth, you bring the breath up into one shoulder, to the middle, to the other shoulder, and back again. And I say use the breath, but it's really, you're doing something in your ribs to help that sensation of going up and making an arc left to right. This is usually a little harder to feel than the bottom one, so if it might be just in your imagination you're doing it, and that's fine. And then begin to play with a forward, backward. So like from your sternum through your neck to the middle of your back. Anybody finding it a little hard to get into the back with the breath? Let's do a little bit, see if we can make that easier. If there's a table in front of you, lean with your elbows on the table and hold your head. If there's no table in front of you, you could lean your elbows on your knees and hold your head. You just want a nice secure place where you feel like your head is nicely supported and it's comfortable. Kind of like the thinker, the statue, except with both hands. And look down a little bit as you do that. And try breathing into your back. You could imagine that a friend has their hand very gently resting somewhere on your back, and you're breathing right into that hand. So there's a warm, comforting hand on your back, and you're trying to direct your breath. And you have to kind of like pull in your belly and aim it toward the hand. And then move the hand on your back as if you could gently pick up their hand and place it somewhere else on your back. And try to breathe into that imaginary hand on your back. You might find it easier to breathe into some parts of your back if you just have one hand on your cheek. That might make it easier to breathe into the opposite side of your back. You could experiment a little to see if that helps you find a different place. And take the next 10 breaths to put the hand in a different place each breath and try and push right into that hand. You know, when you pet a cat and their back rises into your hand when you pet them, you're the cat and there's a loving hand on your back that you're pushing into. It's a funny feeling, feeling the ribs in the back expand to allow the breath to come in. It's an unfamiliar feeling to most of us. We're used to thinking about the ribs on the front of the body expanding, but that the idea that the ribs in the back can expand so that the breath can go more in that spot. Okay. Rest for a minute in sitting. And tap the front of your sternum a few times, just from top to bottom. You can see in the picture of the skeleton behind me how long the sternum is. It goes to at the bottom to the place where the ribs begin to curl down. And begin to imagine, what does the inside of your sternum look like? So you can feel the front of your sternum, but it's got a backside and it faces your spine. Okay. And then your spine back there is like spools of thread stacked on top of each other. And with your hands, if you have the flexibility, you can feel the pokey bits on the back of your spine. But for now, what I want you to do is imagine the front of your spine, like two curved, or more than two, stacks of spools of thread. And there's a space between your sternum and your spine. And close your eyes and see if you can sense, is the top of your sternum closer to your spine, or is the bottom of your sternum closer to your spine? Like it's a very felt internal sense of how far apart are these in space. That we're not so used to thinking of ourselves as three-dimensional, but that there is space in there. If you had a skeleton and you were trying to put some padding in there so it didn't get damaged in shipping, what shape would that padding be inside yourself? So sometimes people, when they breathe, they move their sternum and their spine together. So they push them both a little forward. Try doing that. Try taking an inhale, pushing your sternum forward and pulling your shoulder blades together behind you. So there's a little bit of an arch. And then when you exhale, both your sternum and your spine move a little backwards. Okay. There's another way to breathe, which is that your sternum goes forward and your spine goes backward. So I find to find this, if I imagine a balloon inside me, like at a carnival when they're making balloon animals, and the balloon pushes my sternum and my spine away from each other a little. And you can try this balloon animal at different heights in your sternum and your spine. And do you have a sense that this balloon is centered in the middle of you, left and right? Or is that balloon a little bit off to one side? And you might have to experiment with that if you adjust where your weight is on your sit bones, left and right, to see if you can find that spot where the balloon is not left, not right, pressing against the center of your sternum and the center of your spine. So the ribs in the front are opening and the ribs in the back are opening. All the ribs are lifting up a little bit. And let that go. And now go back to the idea that there's a bowl in the top of you and polishing it front to back. And see if it's gotten a little bit easier to find the little tiny movements that help you kind of go around the inside of the bowl on the top, front to back. And let that go. We're going to keep playing with these balloon animals, or the balloons that expand. And let's put a balloon on a diagonal from one shoulder to the opposite hip. And inflate that balloon on the diagonal. And notice as you do it, do you inflate the bottom half of the balloon first or the top? Or does it start from the middle and go in both directions? What color is the balloon you're inflating inside yourself? How long is it? Is there a constriction in the middle? Is it kind of a wasp-waisted balloon or an evenly round balloon? Okay, pause for a moment. And as you pause, is it easier for your eyes to look up to the left or to the right? Does it go with which way you just did your balloon? And now let's inflate the balloon on the other diagonal. See if this one's easier to find or harder to find than the other. Is this balloon the same color? The same diameter? Same length? Or is it different? Where does this one inflate first? Down at the bottom, up at the top, in the middle? It's like, who knew you had a habit for how you inflate the diagonal balloon inside you? But you do. And then once inflate this diagonal, and then relax, and then inflate the other diagonal. And feel how your body moves a little bit. You'll find yourself perhaps shifting on your sit bones a little. And it's a movement very much like that walking on your sit bones or like walking. Remember when we looked at the video of Peter Hull, the man who had no legs and he was walking in his chair. It has that same sensation of the balloons can help that happen. Okay, let that go. And take a breath in, see what it feels like to breathe. See where you feel yourself expand in your inside.
Find a song. Take a breath and see what it feels like to breathe.
Alexa just said that she can't find a song, what it feels like to take a breath and breathe. It's okay.
You just got my Alexa going.
Oh, sorry. I tend to, when I remember, I refer to her as Voldemort, of she who shall not be named.
But it found a song on mine.
Ah, yours is smarter than mine is. My favorite with her is when I was trying to find a phone number and my husband and I were talking, do you have it on your phone? Do I have it on my phone? And she pipes up with, I can tell you a random number. All righty. So now try a balloon left to right inside you. And I find the easiest is kind of right around the mid ribs. You could try it up a little higher, and then it feels like you're channeling the Hulk with making your shoulders broader. And see if you fill up one side before you fill the other. And then deliberately try and fill up the one side and then fill the other. And then reverse it and try and fill the harder side first. So now we're beginning to get this sensation inside of us that you're like a bread box, right? You're either almost hollow from pelvic floor up to the top. And begin to breathe so that you go up the front wall of yourself, come up to the top, and then go down the back. So it's a big oval pathway that goes up the front to the back, pushes out the back as it goes down into the pelvic floor, does that polish the bowl on the bottom, comes up high, polishes the bowl on the top. Do you have a question, Marilyn? Oh, okay. And then try a few times going in the other direction.
Irene, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
I notice like when I breathe in really deeply and I kind of like come back to the middle of my back, above the bra line, I suddenly feel really dizzy. I feel like, and I've
Okay.
noticed if I'm looking down at my cell phone and there's the point at which for some reason, I don't know why, and I'll just quickly, I don't know if anybody else has that experience.
Anybody else having an experience with dizziness or so when we have that dizzy experience in the body, it's often a sign that we're getting into some unfamiliar territory. And if you do have it, make a smaller movement. Don't push so hard into that spot. Or just imagine doing the movement for a little while. But you don't want to try to push through or into that dizziness because it just makes you feel queasy and yucky afterwards. So it's good to acknowledge it when it happens and then back off. And this applies in every Feldenkrais lesson. It's neurologically, it's overwhelming your system when that happens. Now close your eyes, exhale, wait until you have to breathe, and feel how that breath flowers within you. Where does it start, and where do you feel movement? Is there a little bit more possibility in the back of yourself as you're breathing? So for posture, for what is good posture, one way to think of when you're in balance is when the breath can go in every direction all at once. So let's go into some of our favorite bad posture positions. Go ahead and roll back on your sit bones. Lean against the back of your chair. Look down at your cell phone and your imaginary cell phone in your hand. And then do the exhale and the breathe in and feel what that feels like. Where does the air go or not go when you do that? Okay. Come back and find that flat spot on your sit bones with your knees wide. Take a breath in and feel where the air goes. Do whatever adjustments you need to do to find a way to make the front and the back go wider. Anat, welcome. Okay, now let's slouch in a different way. Imagine you're sitting, leaning sideways on something. You know, you're in a couch and it's got a side piece on it and you're leaning on it. And take a breath in and feel where it goes. And come back to the middle. Try slouching the other way. Take a breath in and feel where it goes. And then come back, find that spot on the front of your sit bones, on the nice flat spot where you're leaning a little bit forward, and breathe in and feel where the air is going. So this sense of expanding front and back is like your posture coach that goes with you. If you're ever wondering, how am I doing? Just take a breath in and notice what's happening, and then you might find you want to make some little adjustments. So let's try this in standing. And in standing, put your hands on a chair or a hand on a wall. If you're at all challenged with your balance, I'd like you to have a hand touching something. And begin to lift your heels, to lighten your heels and lift your heels so you roll up to the front of your foot, and then set your heels down. And notice when you set your heels down, does your face move backward in space? See if you can find a way to put your heels down so that your head stays in the same place it was when your heels were up. Soft knees will help with this. But in that place where you're a little bit forward of perhaps where you usually are, take a breath in and feel if that sensation of widening front to back, of thickening yourself, of your sternum and your spine moving apart from each other, of how many parts of you can feel the breath moving in. And then transfer your weight back into your heels a little bit more. Take your shoulders, take them back. Think about standing up straight. And take a breath in and feel where that breath goes in. And feel how it's more, the front of yourself can breathe, but the back has no possibility of getting the air in there. And then shift your weight forward, lift your heels. You could imagine you were playing basketball, so when your weight is forward in the front of your feet, imagine dribbling a ball with one hand, and that your knees, everything can bounce a little bit there. Go ahead and put your hand and dribble that imaginary basketball. And in the place where you can do that, that forward place, take the breath in again. And that forward place is going to be the place where it's easier to walk from, easier to move from, and where you'll be more stable. And have a little bit more air getting into your body for oxygenating yourself. And go for a little walk around. And as you walk, it gets more complicated, but try and sense your breath as you're walking. What do you have to do in your back and your belly in order to feel the breath and going in both directions? And come back and sit down. And as you sit to the front of your chair, sitting on the front of your sit bones, your knees wide, close your eyes, breathe in, and feel the bowl of your pelvic floor expand in all directions. And feel the bowl in the top of you expand in all directions. one of the things we talked about on Tuesday with being able to fully empty the bladder is the double void, where you relax and some comes out and then you push again. And this position that we're in, that little bit forward, that allows you to push into every part of your pelvic bowl, will help in that release, to fully empty. So if you sit back on your toilet, kind of like leaning back against the seat, and you try pushing, the push goes in a totally different way than when you're centered over yourself. You can't feel your sit bones when you're on the toilet because they're narrower usually than the toilet bowl. But the position, or if you're standing, and if you're a man standing and having to pee and finding it hard to let the urine come out, finding that place of standing where you can breathe both forward and backward will help your body be in a state of relaxation. Because if your body is feeling at all challenged balance-wise, then the muscles in the pelvic floor we use to help hold ourselves up, and then you can't release. So just some things to play with this. All right, any comments, discussion? And I'm also looking for ideas in our theme of practical things for August of what to work on next. And I know there have been some requests for getting in and out of a car, and I'm still kind of thinking about how to do that one. But
That's what I'm going to suggest.
In and out of a car?
Not flopping into the seat and getting in and out.
Just any thoughts, like when you played with Tuesday's lesson, how did things help? And then, yeah, Colleen.
I was just going to say, flopping into the seat in general, chairs even. And I think it might pertain to the lesson because you get close to your chair and it's really hard, and then just to let go. But that's also a cause of falling sometimes. You miss the chair, it moves a little bit.
Yes.
But it's kind of this whole part of the body too.
Yes, that's a great idea to do that, because it's something. I mean, how many times a day do you have to get up and sit down? And every time you plop, you're doing an injury to your body. It's like you're falling, and you're training your body how to fall. We don't need training in how to fall. And we did one lesson like that near the beginning of the series, but we haven't done one for a while. That would be a good one to do. I think everybody needs that reminder of how your bottom can learn how to kiss the chair instead of fall onto the chair.
And the toilet.
And the toilet. Yeah. Go through fewer toilet seats that way.
I know people have broken their hip doing the drop to the chair.
Oh, wow. Yeah, definitely we want to avoid that.
And also, like at night, if you're going to the bathroom and you're not really far enough, close enough to the toilet to sit down, just being, mindful of that. Or
yeah, a lot of the accidents that get people into nursing homes are falling in the bathroom and breaking a hip. So the more skill you have at getting down,
or standing on a bed
and standing up again. Yeah.
Yeah, I did that, standing on a bed and falling on the floor.
Getting out of bed.
No, I was standing on the bed trying to assess something behind the headboard, and I took a step to the side.
Ouch.
Years of recovery. It was really, so you definitely avoid that.
Barbara, unmute yourself, Barbara.
Okay, a couple things after last lesson. I hadn't really felt and I had any issues that were of a concern with the bladder really at all, but I used a couple things happened after that lesson, which are interesting. One, when I go to the bathroom at night, sometimes that last step to get at the right angle to sit down because I need a pee so bad, it's a little precarious. I kind of come at the wrong angle, or I don't sit on the toilet directly. But so that little line you have about talking to the bladder, and you're just a big bag hanging in there, you can hold it. And the other thing was, I don't know if I had an example of why the placebo effect is so influential in Parkinson's treatment, but I felt locked up after that lesson, like releasing my urine. So, I mean, I could normally, but I could pee regularly, but it was kind of like sometimes I felt like I wanted to let go more, and it was locked. I felt locked up from the lesson because we practiced locking up so much. I held on to the issue being brought up played into my psyche. Yeah.
But today's lesson, we worked a little bit more with the release part, so that's good because you need both. Absolutely, you need both.
I can definitely.
Irene,
Yes.
can I ask you something regarding this lesson? So for me, the discovery was the expansion from the back while we breathe. You said that we have a tendency to arch when we take the breath in. And I noticed that it is, I do this, I fall into this pattern. And it was like an epiphany, the ability to expand from the back and also from the neck.
Yes.
And even the eyes, even higher, to expand the space behind the eyes. And because there is, and I noticed that there is a lot of distance between the front of the eyes till the
To the back of the head.
Exactly. So it was, but while walking, I couldn't do this this expansion in the sagittal plane. It was either this or either that.
In walking, I have this cool little structure here that is like a person walking with the tension. And when we walk, we twist one way and then we twist the other way. So the breathing, there's not a moment in walking where we're kind of in this neutral place where everything's going to expand in the sagittal plane perfectly. It's going to expand in a diagonal based on, it's more like one diagonal to another diagonal.
Right.
And so next time when you're walking, you might try for that sensation and it might be easier to find.
Yeah.
I like your description of the neck and the head. I don't know if, did other people feel an expansion of, like up into the back of the neck a little? I've never tried feeling it up into my back behind the eyeballs. So something to play with, especially if you do the thing where you're leaning on your hands and you're breathing. See if you can, everybody try it. See if you can find that eyeballs behind your eyeball space. In the behind the neck space. I like the sensation of my neck growing longer as I do that.
I feel like the throat is widening.
Mm-hmm.
The constriction in the inside of the throat is having more space. Like there is less constriction from the muscles inside. It's more kinesthetically. It's more in the inside. The effect of this.
Mm-hmm. One of the challenges with Parkinson's, with all the swallowing, the quiet voice and whatever, when you don't have your body balanced, the muscles of the throat are imbalanced and there's extra constriction in there. And so each of these lessons, when we're working at finding the middle, left, right, forward, back, finding the ability to expand the breath in every direction, makes a huge difference in maintaining swallowing and speaking ability and relaxing the throat. I didn't do a measurement with this lesson, but my guess is that everybody's voice deepened just a little bit from doing it, because as the throat muscles relax, our voices get deeper. You could experiment. Let me mute everybody so we don't hear each other as we're playing with it. But if you come and sit on that front part of your sit bone, find the place where your breath can go out and in, and say, imagine you're introducing yourself. hello, my name is, and fill and say your name. And then roll back on your sit bones, slouch against the back of your chair, and say the same thing. See, do you really feel that difference in how you project your voice, the timbre of the voice? And it's for many, it's a strange feeling to go, wow, it's like, you know, we were playing with our sit bones and our breath. How did something happen in the voice? But our body has to be balanced to support the throat and the voice. Any other comments or requests? I think if I don't hear anything else, what I'm going to do next week is the first Tuesday lesson, getting in and out of a chair without plopping, without falling, doing it safely. And then on Thursday, work on in and out of the car. And if any of you have any challenges with a car and you have somebody with a video camera who could take a 30-second video of you getting into the car, and you could send it to me at Irene@movebeyondlimits.com. That would be really helpful for me for doing that particular lesson, because I'm not quite, I have to see the challenges, and then I'll have more ideas of what needs to happen for the lesson. All right, we'll call that done for today. Thank you everybody for coming. Anat, could you stay on for just a sec?
Yeah. Please. Sure.
So Anat, where do you live?
I told you I live in Israel.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that you were. I was wondering about the name.
Yeah, it's not my computer, so I figured out how to.
Okay. And have you been doing Feldenkrais with Riza?
Yes.
Okay.
And with Eilat Almagor.
I know a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, she was my teacher this year.
How are you dealing with the pandemic with your Feldenkrais classes there? Are they happening live or?
Yes. They didn't, at the beginning they closed it, but now it's in the studios.
Here I moved my live classes into a park so that we could be outside, and then mostly I'm teaching on Zoom. Nice to be able to get together with human beings.
Right. Yeah, that's right.